Mark Reynolds raced through empty streets, tears blurring his vision, as every second felt like a lifetime. His baby daughter Lily was missing, and the police were closing in, seizing his car in a desperate search that would reveal shocking secrets no one saw coming. Mark Reynolds had always been considered a devoted father. His neighbors often saw him pushing a stroller through the quiet streets, humming softly to his baby girl Lily. On that Sunday morning, everything seemed ordinary at first. The sun had barely climbed over the rooftops, birds chirped in the distance, and the suburban neighborhood was just beginning to wake. But the ordinary quickly shattered. Mark was standing outside his house, eyes red and puffy, his voice trembling as he spoke into the phone. His words were frantic, almost incoherent, and the dispatcher could hear the unmistakable panic in his tone. His 10-month-old daughter was missing. The police were on the scene within minutes, their sirens cutting through the calm morning. Officers scanned the house and the surrounding yard. The interior was neat, almost meticulously arranged. Toys were scattered across the living room floor, colorful blocks forming tiny towers that had been abandoned mid-play. A blanket lay half-folded in the corner of the crib, and baby clothes were stacked carefully in the dresser. Nothing about the house suggested violence or struggle, yet subtle signs hinted at chaos. A small backpack had been hastily packed, left sitting on the couch, and the back door was slightly ajar. Neighbors gathered in small clusters, whispering theories that ranged from a kidnapping to a sudden accident. Security cameras from nearby houses recorded Mark's car parked in front of the house the previous night, completely still, then captured him driving off in a rush that morning, weaving through streets as if time itself were against him. His face, wet with tears, was etched with desperation. It was a sight that would haunt anyone who saw it. As the search unfolded, the tension intensified. Police began checking every nearby street, park, and alley. Each hour that passed without a lead made the situation more urgent. Friends and family arrived at the scene, some holding back tears, others trying to calm Mark, who seemed almost detached from reality in his grief. Rumors began spreading quickly on social media. People speculated wildly about the cause of the disappearance, questioning whether the father might be involved or whether some stranger had taken Lily. Every detail was scrutinized. A stray diaper in the yard, a single shoe left on the porch, even the angle of the car's parked position all became clues in a growing web of uncertainty. Investigators realized that what appeared at first to be a straightforward case of a missing child was anything but simple. The urgency of the situation was compounded by the unknown. Where was Lily? Who had taken her? And why had it happened so suddenly? The answers remained elusive, and the story of the crying father racing through the streets was only beginning. The discovery of Mark's car being stopped by the police added an unexpected layer to the investigation. Authorities traced its movements using GPS data, revealing a path that seemed erratic and nervous, as if the vehicle itself held secrets it was unwilling to reveal. When officers finally seized the car for evidence, it was clear that this wasn't just a desperate father's frantic drive. It was a critical piece of the puzzle. Inside they found traces of baby formula, a soft blanket, and a small stuffed toy. These items suggested that Lily had been with him, or at least had been in the car recently. Yet, despite these clues, the child remained missing, and every passing hour deepened the urgency. Investigators meticulously examined every inch of the vehicle. Fingerprints and DNA swabs were taken from the steering wheel, the seats, and even the corners of the floor mats. The results shocked the detectives. There were traces of an unknown individual, someone who had been in the car without leaving a clear trail. Security cameras along Mark's route revealed fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure moving near the vehicle at odd intervals. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Someone had been alongside the car, following or perhaps guiding it, without Mark noticing, or perhaps he had noticed and had been too scared to mention it. Meanwhile, the father's public image continued to complicate the investigation. News outlets broadcast images of Mark, tear-streaked and pale, gripping the steering wheel in panic. Social media users flooded with sympathy, while others speculated that his emotional display was staged. Detectives knew that appearances could be deceiving, and they scrutinized every inconsistency in his account. Friends and neighbors were interviewed repeatedly, yet none could explain the sudden disappearance or the strange movements captured on camera. Theories multiplied. Could the child have been taken by someone Mark knew? Was this a premeditated act, or a random crime of opportunity. Each possibility carried its own chilling implications. Officers expanded the search beyond the immediate area, questioning strangers and tracking vehicles with unusual patterns, trying to piece together a timeline that made sense. The tension in the city mounted as people began to fear the unimaginable, that a baby could vanish from her own home, leaving no clear trace of what had happened. As hours turned into an entire day, investigators faced the sobering reality that every lead seemed to open more questions than it answered. The seemingly ordinary morning had spiraled into a labyrinth of uncertainty, suspicion, and fear. Mark's car, once a simple vehicle, had become the center of a complex investigation, holding clues that could determine the fate of a missing child. Every item inside, every fingerprint, and every digital trace became a vital piece of a story that refused to reveal its secrets easily. Days stretched on, and the city seemed to hold its breath. Volunteers combed parks, alleys, and abandoned lots, flashlights cutting through shadows as they called out Lily's name. Police widened the search radius, checking nearby rivers, construction sites, and even isolated fields on the outskirts of town. Every lead was followed, every tip investigated, but the trail remained frustratingly cold. Authorities began to wonder if the disappearance had been planned with precision, executed in a way that left no trace for anyone to follow. Then, a breakthrough arrived unexpectedly. A local gas station camera captured Mark's car making a brief stop late at night on a nearly deserted road. Investigators reviewed the footage again and noticed something peculiar: tire tracks veering off the asphalt, leading into a patch of overgrown land beside the road. The tracks were faint, but they hinted at deliberate maneuvering, as though someone had driven the vehicle into a hidden spot, perhaps trying to conceal evidence. When police searched the area, they uncovered small, personal items partially buried beneath leaves and dirt: a tiny shoe, a torn blanket, and a pacifier. Each discovery confirmed a chilling truth: Lily had been there, but by whom and why was still unknown. Authorities began piecing together a timeline, matching the GPS coordinates, surveillance footage, and the newly found items. The movements of Mark's car suggested that someone had been orchestrating events, deliberately misdirecting both him and the police. Detectives faced a gnawing uncertainty. Could Mark have been manipulated, or was he an unwitting participant in a larger plan? Every question seemed to deepen the mystery rather than clarify it. As the days passed, investigators also turned their attention to digital footprints. Phone records, text messages, and social media accounts were examined for clues. Messages from unknown numbers were traced, deleted posts recovered, and subtle patterns in GPS logs analyzed. Something became clear: this was not a random act. Someone had planned the abduction carefully, moving pieces with a precision that made it nearly impossible to anticipate their next step. Meanwhile, the community's fear and anxiety grew. Parents kept children close, and strangers in the neighborhood were viewed with suspicion. Each report of a baby seen alone or a man driving frantically rekindled hope, only to be dashed when the sightings proved unrelated. The investigation had turned into a tense, almost obsessive search for answers. Everyone involved knew that time was critical, and yet, with every lead, the case seemed to twist further into a maze with no exit. The search had become more than a desperate attempt to find a missing child. It was a high-stakes race against an unseen adversary, one who was always one step ahead. Every moment mattered, every clue carried weight, and the suspense grew, leaving everyone wondering if Lily could be found before it was too late. The investigation entered a critical phase when forensic experts discovered evidence inside Mark's car that changed the case entirely. Small traces of fabric fibers, faint fingerprints, and subtle smudges revealed that someone else had been carefully moving items around, almost as if trying to confuse investigators. But it wasn't just physical evidence that offered new insight. Digital clues began to emerge. Messages on Mark's phone, encrypted and deleted, were partially recovered, pointing to unfamiliar contacts and suspicious locations. GPS data, once thought to simply track the frantic movements of a worried father, now suggested deliberate detours to places far from the main roads. Authorities focused on one particular location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The GPS coordinates matched patterns seen in the car's route. When investigators approached the building, they found it abandoned, yet recently used. Inside, evidence of temporary habitation appeared: a small cot, scattered baby clothes, and even a few toys that seemed out of place in a warehouse environment. The faint scent of a child lingered in the air, almost tangible, confirming the terrifying reality that Lily had been moved and hidden by someone. With careful intent, detectives began reconstructing the sequence of events with urgency. Each new detail suggested that the abduction had been planned meticulously. Whoever was behind it understood the neighborhood, the routes Mark would take, and the methods police would use to track him. The sense of foreboding grew as officers realized they were dealing with someone methodical, almost calculating, who had orchestrated the child's disappearance like pieces on a chessboard. Meanwhile, the public remained captivated and anxious. News outlets reported every development, fueling speculation and fear. Social media buzzed with theories ranging from a stranger kidnapping to a hidden family conflict. Volunteers continued to search, scanning every inch of the city, yet the warehouse hinted that the child had been moved far from public view. The complexity of the investigation became a psychological burden for those involved. Every clue seemed to raise more questions than it answered. Authorities also revisited Mark's movements, re-examining every deviation from the expected route. Analysts noted subtle inconsistencies that suggested he had been manipulated or forced into choices he did not fully understand. Every angle was considered: the possibility of coercion, the involvement of accomplices, even a broader network. With the warehouse as a focal point, police prepared for a high-stakes operation, knowing that the next steps could be decisive. The tension was almost unbearable, the stakes higher than ever, and the mystery of Lily's disappearance had become a race against time, intelligence, and cunning beyond anyone's expectation. The final breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A neighbor, who had been quietly observing unusual activity near the warehouse, provided a series of photographs showing a small figure being carried by a woman in disguise during the late hours of the night. The images were grainy but unmistakable. It was Lily. For the first time in days, investigators had a tangible lead pointing to her location. The authorities quickly coordinated a tactical operation, careful not to alert the suspect, knowing that every second counted. As the police approached the warehouse, tension reached its peak. Inside, signs of recent habitation confirmed what the neighbors' photos suggested: makeshift bedding, scattered baby items, and evidence of someone living off minimal supplies indicated that Lily had been kept hidden for days. The team moved cautiously, aware that any sudden movement could put the child in danger. Then, in a back room, they found her small, frightened, and alone, yet unharmed. The rescue was swift but carefully executed, with officers securing the area before bringing her out to safety. Mark, who had been kept informed but separated from the scene for safety, was overcome with emotion when he was reunited with Lily. The relief was overwhelming, and the image of the crying father finally shifted from fear and despair to gratitude and relief. The community, who had followed the search closely, shared in the collective exhale as news of the rescue spread. The investigation then focused on identifying the woman responsible. Evidence gathered from the warehouse, combined with digital traces and the photographs, led to a shocking revelation. The suspect was someone close to the family, a person who had quietly nurtured resentment and jealousy. The motive was complicated, tangled with emotions and grudges that had gone unnoticed until it culminated in this harrowing abduction. Authorities worked quickly to arrest her, ensuring that she could no longer pose a threat. In the aftermath, Mark's car, once a symbol of chaos and panic, was returned and examined one last time. Every item, from the baby blanket to the small toy, was meticulously documented as part of the case, preserving the evidence that had helped unravel the mystery. The story, which had begun with a simple missing child report, had evolved into a labyrinth of deception, manipulation, and fear, ending with a rescue that felt almost miraculous. The case left an indelible mark on everyone involved. The image of a father racing through the streets, desperate to save his child, remained vivid in the minds of the public. It was a reminder of how quickly ordinary life could turn into a nightmare, how ordinary people could face extraordinary challenges, and how resilience and persistence could ultimately prevail against even the most carefully hidden dangers.